Hello, everybody. Again, we have reached the end of day 2 of the ISM's Empowered Musician Conference, and I hope you've really enjoyed the various sessions, the panels, the music, the keynote speeches, the wonderful in-conversations. And I hope you haven't been tempted to leave your screen. It is still raining in London. So it has now rained continuously since 9:30. So absolutely no reason to leave the ISM Empowered Conference today. And indeed, we've had over 700 people watching. And I'm just so pleased that you have been with us over the last couple of days. What's really struck me is an extraordinary sense of community. And it's a community, again, across all different genres, across all different parts of the profession. We've heard from all different aspects. We've tackled COVID-19, which has been, I think, a massive seismic change for the profession. And lots of people talked about how we can build back better. And I think that is a theme the ISM will be taking very much to heart. What can we do on behalf of the profession to make sure musicians are not so vulnerable should this ever happen again? And we've heard about the toxicity of things like force majeure clauses, but also the fact that many musicians are not properly paid for their extraordinary talent. And those are all things that the ISM is very focused on, and we want to do something about. We've also heard about Brexit, and we know that Brexit is going to be a huge challenge, and the ISM is doing everything it possibly can to make sure that you have the knowledge to navigate what could be a bumpy road as we try and work out the next 12 months post the transition period. So do keep your eyes glued to the ISM website for updates. We've also heard about Black Lives Matter and the changes we need to make within the music profession, which are so important to all of us. And of course, the impact that music education has if we don't sort ourselves out in relation to the EBAC and to access to music education for everybody. It should not just be the preserve of the elite. I want to thank all of the panel members, all of the keynote speakers. I also want to say a big thanks to David Lammy, who was absolutely wonderful to interview, and also to Shlomo, who did that fantastic masterclass, and to Roderick Williams just now for his In Conversation. I have to say, I have really enjoyed the last 2 days, even though I was incredibly nervous to start off with, because you never know whether the tech is going to fail. But the duet group have been fabulous all the way through. So I want to say a big thank you to Peter and Paul, who have taken us on this journey. And I will also want to say thank you to the ISM board for green lighting this conference, and also to the extraordinarily talented ISM staff team who have made this all possible. So thank you all very much. Have a good festive break and keep safe and well. And now over to the president of the ISM, Professor Chris Collins.
Thank you very much, Deborah. And I'm going to begin by repeating what you've just said, but I'm going to add in one more person, and that is you, Deborah. Thank you very much for your work heading up this remarkable team of people whose work has been incredible over the past few months, and over the last 2 days, even more so, because I'm sure those calls have continued coming through while we've been here in this conference. What an informative, engaging, inspiring, and ultimately uplifting event this has been. My name's Chris Collins, as Deborah has just said. I have the enormous privilege of being the president of the ISM this year. I'm also Professor of Music at Aberdeen University. Before that, I was Professor of Music at Bangor University, and I was born near Manchester. So I have 3 of the 4 nations in my blood, and that has been a real thing to celebrate in this conference as well. When I took over as president with great ideas about all the wonderful things we might do this year, of course, I, like everybody else, had no idea what was actually going to happen. But it's been a source of immense pride for me to be the president at a time when the ISM has never been more needed. And quite frankly, has probably never worked harder for us all as musicians as well. And this event is a perfect example of that, of course. So thank you again, Deborah. Thank you to the team who've put this together. Thank you also to the musicians. It's been lovely to hear some real music, which we have so little opportunity to do at the moment compared to in normal times. There's one other set of people, though, without whom this event couldn't have happened, and that is the members of the ISM. Early in the pandemic, we at the ISM took the decision to really be a rallying point for the entire profession, hence why our coronavirus advice is accessible to all on our website, and why we're holding events like this one today. But really, that's just the top layer of what the ISM provides for its members. And we've heard about some of these things over the past couple of days. Deborah mentioned at the very beginning 2,000 calls this year for legal advice. We've heard about the counselling support that's available, the physiotherapy support that's available, all free of charge for members. And we've heard about just how important our mental and physical health are as we seek to be resilient through this crisis. And then there's the lobbying, which is what the ISM really excels at. The ISM is in constant contact with politicians at Westminster, at Cardiff Bay, at Stormont, at Holyrood. And that contact with politicians is what enables the ISM to put forward the views of the entire community. So the power of the collective is really important here. And the ISM is a true collective. It represents all areas of the music profession: performers, composers, teachers, managers, agents, technicians, administrators, you name it. And we also represent all genres of music too. And, as I've already said, all of the nations and regions of the UK. So if you're not yet a member, I hope I've sold it to you in the last minute or two. We would love you to join us, and you can find out how to do that at our website, ism.org. So it's fallen to me to pull together a few of the threads from what we've heard over the last two extremely enlightening days. And I'd like to sort of begin by asking the question, where are we now? I woke up yesterday morning already incredibly excited because I had a conference to attend. So I became even more excited when, over my breakfast, I had a look at the news and saw that the Pfizer vaccine is going to be rolled out from next Monday. A real moment of seeing light at the end of the tunnel that was very much needed. I was kind of hoping that I'd wake up this morning and find out there'd been a trade deal agreed, but sadly, we didn't get both of those things. So, of course, we're not there yet, but there is, a happy event on the horizon, I hope. And that brings into our sights the one thing that we've really missed over the past 8-9 months, and that is the ability to communicate with our colleagues, to communicate with our audiences, to communicate with our pupils, and to do that in a way that is completely unhindered because we're in the same room. If music isn't about communication, I don't know what it is about. That's absolutely what we are doing as musicians and as music professionals. As I just said, we're not quite there yet. And while the pandemic continues, there are still some hardships, but we can celebrate what we've learned. We've all learned new skills. We've enhanced our toolkit. We found innovative ways to teach, to perform, to rehearse, to live stream. And of course, we will still have those skills when we go back to something which is more familiar at the end of this crisis. The important thing is that we need to be ready to bounce back and once again make it clear that our work is, sorry Rishi Sunak, not just viable, but actually economically profitable. £6 billion in the UK economy, incredibly important sector of this country's financial viability. And when we do bounce back, the ISM will be here for us, as it has been since 1882. Which, again, is not to say that things aren't bad now. We've heard over the past 2 days so many stories of how individuals and organisations have struggled. Venues, particularly, have been put in an impossible situation. But on the whole, I hope you have found, as I have, that the tone of the last 2 days has been optimistic and positive. We've heard about a wide range of sources of financial assistance and advice. We've heard about amazing technological platforms that enable us, for instance, to rehearse with very little lag, almost, but not quite, as good as being in the same room. We've heard individual stories from musicians and others of ways in which they have managed to be resilient through the crisis. We've heard stories of musicians whose audiences have actually grown and diversified through the option of live streaming, which they may never have considered before. But there are two particular areas of hope that I'd like to mention, and it's probably not a coincidence that they're the same two that Deborah mentioned a few minutes ago. The first one is the renewed debate about diversity. Cardetu Kana Mason mentioned this morning the impact on the world of the atrocious death of George Floyd back in May. That was a watershed moment, and I can't help feeling that the fact that that happened in the middle of a global pandemic actually gave us some space to do something we should have done long ago. It gave us a moment to reflect on our own practices and to think about what that means for the music sector. And the lack of diversity has, quite frankly, been a major problem in the UK music profession for many years. We've been very bad at celebrating difference. We've been very bad at choosing collaborators who look different to how we ourselves look. And as Keith Harris said earlier on today, we've been very bad at allowing a situation to develop where, to quote Keith directly, you're only as good as the social network of your parents. So Black Lives Matter has given new impetus to the fight for greater diversity and inclusion across the sector. And greater diversity and inclusion means also looking at the obstacles facing women, the LGBTQ community, and many other groups, including, of course, the socially excluded, many of whom are doubly excluded at the moment because of digital poverty, which stops them from accessing many of the technological platforms that we are now using on a daily basis. The ISM will be at the vanguard of that fight. Deborah reminded me earlier that the ISM was one of the first professional societies to admit women members, only a couple of years after it was founded at the end of the last century, but one. My second point, again, also close to the heart of the ISM, is about the importance of finding and keeping new audiences and new communities of musicians, and particularly the next generation of musicians. We need to not just find and keep those, but empower them as well. We need to focus, I think, now not just on ourselves, important as it is to do that, but also on the future of the profession. We need to make sure that the young musicians are able to hit the ground running when this crisis is over, because at the moment, the usual networks in which we advance in this profession are not available to us. Let's hope they come back very soon. And all that brings me to really the last point, the last thing that I want to say today. We've learned so much since March, and we continue to learn. I've learned plenty in the last couple of days. It's been a difficult time, but out of adversity comes strength and unity and innovation. And once the venues reopen, we will be even better music professionals than we were before. And that is something to remember. And I hope this conference has helped you to recognise that in the same way that it has me. Right back at the beginning of the conference, Anita Collins observed that we, as music professionals, are used to being comfortable with being uncomfortable, and how true that is. Part of my work is as a conductor, and every time I stand on that stage with my back to the audience, not knowing how they are responding to what I'm doing, I feel incredibly uncomfortable, but I love it. And that is really at the heart of being a musician. So we're used to that. We've had a big dose of it over the past few months. We'll come through stronger. And I really hope that this conference has helped to confirm that for you. So from everyone at the ISM, thank you ever so much for coming to the Empowered Musician 2020. I hope you found it useful. And I wish you a very happy festive season and what has to be a much more positive new year. Wherever you're joining us from, whether it's in the UK or further afield, hwyl fawr, march yn lyf, goodbye.